Hey everybody, and welcome to Mindset Reset, and I'm your host, Ben Newton. This is the second episode in our 4-part series with Shawn Achor, best-selling author and world-renowned speaker. In the first episode, we set the stage by talking about rational optimism and then discussed how to maintain social connection in a time of social distancing. In this episode, we're going to talk about how you can inoculate your brain against anxiety and stress. As we're kind of thinking about what's going on, I don't know anyone else, listening to this, but, I found that the first week of sheltering at home was pretty stressful. And you sit there and you kind of, you want to stay in touch. You want to understand what's going on, but you can't ignore the news. You can't ignore social media, like in particular with kids, but with anybody, you got to know what's going on. But, there's a lot of messages that are kind of difficult to take in. And through all of that, you want to be thinking about your mental health and your own, ability to kind of keep a positive mindset. So one important thing we wanted to talk about was, basically inoculating your brain against anxiety and stress. So let's talk a little bit about that, Shawn. I mean, how do you really approach that? Because there's so much coming at you. How can you really kind of put up the right, basically just like we want to inoculate against a virus, how do you inoculate yourself against some of this stuff that we have to deal with on a regular basis to live our daily lives?
Well, my wife and I, Michelle Geelan, she started actually in the news. So she was studying how she started as a network news anchor, and she felt like she was telling all these negative stories over and over again. So she wanted to stop so that she could go study what impact the media was having upon us.
Yeah.
And we did a study with Ariana Huffington several years ago. And we found that just the 3 minutes of negative news in the morning impacted your mood 6 to 8 hours later. Your likelihood of reporting a negative day rose by 27% compared to watching neutral news in the morning. That I feel like people kind of knew that. We had no idea that the effects were lasting that long. Like that watching the news in the morning was impacting picking up kids from school later on in the day.
Wow.
What became fascinating, though, is the next part of the study. So they took that same negative piece of news, but that they appended a solution to it. Right. So it's not just here's the world, here's how homelessness is terrible in a certain state or a city. At the end of it, they appended on, and here's the food bank that you can donate to, or here's
Yeah.
what one group. Appending a solution to the problem, it turns out it tripled the problem-solving abilities that the individual had on the very next task they did,
Wow.
even if they didn't donate to the food bank. It's the fact that their brain isn't just creating broken bridges, it's actually believing that there's a possibility of your behavior can matter in the midst of it. Increases your likelihood of looking for those things. So I see it myself, and I have to keep fighting against it in the midst of this crisis, is that as soon as your brain sees a threat, your brain starts to believe maybe I'm under, maybe there are other threats. So your brain scans for them. It's easy to scan for them on Twitter and on,
Right.
that's where that's been my trap recently, is on Twitter. And then your brain pulls over more resources to scan for more threats. And if you're looking for them now, you will find them. There are a ton of them, and now they're all over the world. So then your brain's like, definitely I'm in a place of threat. So I need to stop and take all my resources to deal with these threats. The problem is those resources you keep pulling over, those are the only parts of the brain that process meaning, purpose, and joy. So what happens is the more our brain is doing threat detection, the less it's actually processing the things that we're grateful for in our lives. So I think two things I've been practicing and that align with the research that we've been seeing in the past. One of them is creating a mental moat around your day. We know that the weakest times for your brain, the two most highest levels of weakness, where your brain has the fewest amount of resources, are the first 30 minutes of the day and the last 30 minutes of the day. We know that just about fatigue levels and your hormone levels. So if that's the weakest part of my day, that's oftentimes when I pick up my phone and find out what happened the night before, right? Or right as I'm trying to go to sleep for the evening, I'm reading about all these threats that are occurring within my life. So what I did is I just shut that part off. So I made a moat around my day where the first 30 minutes, the last 30 minutes, I just don't engage with social media or the news. I still do it during the rest of the day because I want to know what's going on in the world and I want to be a rational optimist in the midst of it. But I'm actually creating a defense in my day so that when my brain does see the negative, I increase the likelihood of my brain having the resources to deal with it. The other thing we need to do is if we're going to bring so much imagery and information of negativity in, we actually have to have a counterbalancing storehouse of positive imagery on the other side. So I worked with a group of critical care nurses in Boston post the bombing that occurred there. And one of the things that they told me that they did is they would keep a manila envelope on their desk. And all throughout the year, when something good would happen in their ward, they would like a patient got better, or a kid drew a picture of them being a nurse, or their kids at home wrote a thank you note, or a school class said how great they were. They would put those in there and they would keep them, or a note from a peer. And then when those terrible days happen, which they always do, especially in these trauma wards, when those terrible days happen, they open up this in case of emergency folder. And suddenly their brain now has access to the storehouse of positive imagery. Because what happens
Oh,
in the midst of threat is your brain, that negative starts to take up the entirety of your brain's vision. So what you need to do is actually have something else your brain can latch onto. What we find is that those small thank you notes might not and probably will not completely neutralize the impact of a threat of unemployment, right? Or a threat of disease upon a family, right? What we're finding is that it seems to actually uh, give your brain the awareness that it's not, that the negative is not the entirety of the world, it's local, and it might be also temporary. The good things could happen in the future. As soon as that happens, the brain shifts and starts to have resources that it allocates to solving the problem instead of being paralyzed by it. So I think that there's some simple ways to do that. The way that we start our homeschool with our kids now, we write down 3 things we're grateful for, just like we've been researching. So 3 things you're grateful for that that are new, that have occurred over the past 24 hours. That's something we've done for a long time. That's how we put our kids to sleep at night. What happens is your brain then is scanning for something new that's positive in the midst of all this negativity that's going on.
yeah.
I think that that's true for any challenge or crisis or any day. But what we've added onto it that I'm excited to study now is now the very next day, we go back through the gratitudes the day before and we pick our favorite one. And then we crumple it up write it on a sheet of paper, crumple it up and put it into a bowl. So we're actually revisiting the things we were grateful for the day before, increasing our likelihood of remembering it, and then storing it. And then it becomes this tapestry of meaning for our family so that when this crisis ends, whenever that is, we're going to have a notebook and this bowl full of all the positive things that occurred in the midst of this, instead of this was such a difficult period in our lives.
Sean, I have a question for you that hearing you talk about it, you reminded me of something that I was wondering the last time I heard you talk about this a few weeks ago. Um, is you say 3 things? Is there any particular reason why you pick three, or is that just is it a convenient number, or just more than one? I mean, why three?
That's a great question. From the research side, we don't know too much about the answer to that. What matters is the scanning. So 10 might be better than 3. The reason we pick 3 is about 1, it's pretty easy.
Yeah.
3, your brain actually has to push a little bit harder. 10 feels overwhelming and people stop. That's actually the main reason for it. But if there's a bigger difference, like if doing 10, I'm willing to bet 10 would be better than 3 if you could get somebody to do it. So what we
Yeah.
picked was something that was easy that somebody could do in a 45-second period of time. Part of the reason I've been doing the 3 is we've been trying to get people to do it while they brush their teeth, so that there's a retrieval cue in the brain that as soon as they think about brushing their teeth, they actually think about gratitudes. So if you already have one positive habit, you don't have to add another one. You just do it during the previous positive habit. So a 45 seconds of thinking of 3 new things you're grateful for can occur while you brush your teeth.
That probably helped me brush my teeth better too, because I spend more time brushing my teeth. Um, I wonder if you could do that while you're washing your hands too, instead of sitting
Yeah,
there
right. We're
scrolling.
supposed to be watching it for a while now. Yeah, exactly.
um, well, one thing I definitely want to say too, when I heard you speak in February, and I definitely took away that idea. I wanted to try it. So like I said, we have 2 kids, and so we started doing it at dinner, because I remember that you guys did it at least for a while at dinner, and we've been doing it for a few weeks now, and I wasn't sure. I was like, okay, we should probably keep doing it through the crisis, but I was like, I wonder how this is going to go, and it's actually been amazingly impactful. And I'll try the bedtime thing too, because I think the way you were talking about it definitely it shifts the mood immediately. I've seen it because we're a little stressed because we just made dinner, trying to get the kids to be quiet and sit down. My wife just cooked or whatever, or maybe I cooked, and there's usually stress going into dinner, but you immediately sit down. It's like it shifts, and it stays that way for a while, and that's pretty. So I guess one question along with that, is it about those habits and kind of introducing those during the day? Is that probably what helps too? Is that you start kind of injecting this throughout the day as well? Does that help?
It absolutely helps because what we're finding is that you know th- in certain religious traditions they would play a bell like at certain hours
Yeah.
just to bring your brain back to awareness of this amazing we're even alive right now, right? Or there's things to be grateful for. I think in the midst of all this, like when this first started happening, I felt like my brain was going to panic mode immediately, like thinking
Yeah.
about all the threats that are going on, and gratitude falls down on that list. But we find that when people are grateful, their levels of optimism rise. Their brains scan for more solutions. We actually find that their productivity improves, creative problem solving improves,
Hmm.
creativity triples, intelligence rises. So if we have a massive problem we need to deal with, we need to bring the best brain possible to bear upon that situation. So we're finding that these small things like gratitudes actually have huge impacts upon us feeling like, are we paralyzed in the midst of this, or are we actually moving beyond ourselves to help somebody out in the midst of this? One of the things I love to mention with the gratitudes is we've been doing work in crisis centers. And, a lot of the work that I do is in the midst of high levels of challenge. One of the things I shared at the Sumo Logic conference was this idea that we were working with a level 1 trauma hospital,
Hmm.
Orlando Health, and we got them at every single one of their staff meetings to have every person in the room say one thing that they're grateful for. Exactly what you're doing at the dinner table, right?
Yeah.
Start the meeting not with all the threats they have to, the fires they need to put out. They're actually starting with gratitude, which is it feels like it's not part of the job description, right? Um, they did it for 2 years, and then getting this part of their culture that when we start meetings, we need to start positive. We're going to do this. And then, as I shared, 2 years after we started doing this with them, the Pulse nightclub shooting occurred 3 blocks
Hmm.
down from them. So this is a level 1 trauma hospital. They see trauma all the time. They're designed. This was the largest trauma they've experienced all at one time,
Yeah.
like what we're experiencing in an unprecedented time. Um, and what they found was the very next morning, the thing that they started their meetings, their staff meetings with gratitudes again, because that was their culture. They said that they were so grateful that they hadn't wasted the last 2 years just working with the people that they were working with. And I think in the midst of this, we could just hunker down. I think we could just try and get our work done whatever it is, and we can, just try to ride this out as long as we can. Or like you're doing, you can see you can scan for the positives that are going on, and then use that as the fuel to help other people in the midst of this challenge. And that's what actually causes people to feel higher levels of happiness. Isolation and loneliness. I was just reading a great research study about it. They found that the loneliness comes oftentimes not from the fact that there aren't a quantity of people around them, but that they feel like that they don't have a meaningful impact upon those
Yeah.
people, vice versa, right? So you can increase that meaning by pushing out instead of just receiving.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty amazing. Yeah. I would say my boss starts our staff meetings with this now, and it definitely has made an impact. And I have a little cynicism every once in a while. I'm like, oh, this is going to be painful. But once I think you make a habit out of it, it starts to become more natural. And yeah, it does. It definitely changes how you think about things and how you think about the world around you if you're starting it off like that. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Well, I mean, just kind of pulling this all together with some summarizing some actions that all of you can do. So so like Sean was saying, he creates a moat around his day. I love that expression. So you can create a moat around your day by starting and ending the day by starting brushing your teeth, or however you want to do it, by talking about 3 things you're grateful for before you go to bed at night. Making sure to think about something positive, think about some of those good things that have happened during the day, something that you're grateful for, and find some other places to insert it, like my family's done around the dinner table, around meetings, however it is, but inserting that throughout the day will help kind of keep that positive momentum throughout the day. So I think that's really easy things to do. And it can be, it could be, fun to do. And if you want to go for the advanced level, maybe you can start doing this thing where you keep it and put it in a bowl. Maybe we'll try that once. My family's been doing it for a few weeks. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's really great. Like we were saying, in the stressful times, being able to inoculate your brain against this and being able to figure out how to maintain that momentum. Thanks everybody for listening to this episode of Mindset Reset. This has been the second episode in a 4-part series. In our next episode, learn how to become more adaptive in the midst of uncertainty and change by creating short-term goals and cataloging positive progress. So thanks for spending time with us, and see you on the next episode of Mindset Reset.